Hey, welcome to Lust is Boring. A couple weeks ago, Crystalina and I did a live Q&A on Facebook, and we had no chance to answer all of the flood of questions that came in. So we decided we were going to dig back into that list of comments and questions on Facebook and finally get to all the questions that were asked, or as many as we possibly could. And so thus today's episode. So we're going to go through all these questions on dating, relationships, breaking up, love, finding love, losing love. So stay tuned for that. Again, our episode today brought to you by the folks at Hallow. Lent is still going on. Dive into their Lent challenge. I think there are over like 70,000 people now have signed up for this thing. Month of St. Joseph, they've got devotions to him. They've got Bible stories that you can read at night, trying to relax, get your mind off all the anxieties of the world. Check out their sleep stories. I've got one. I'll put you right to sleep. I promise, money back guarantee, and it's free. And so just try it out for 2 weeks for free. Just go to hallow.com/lustisboring. And the more people that check this out, they see that we're supporting them through this podcast. And so it really helps our podcast directly by you just checking out this app for free. And then also make sure to check out covenanteyes.com. This is internet screen accountability software for your families to make sure that the kids aren't getting into stuff, that spouses are accountable to each other. There's just so much stuff out there coming at the kids, whether it's through their apps, their sext messages, the YouTube. I mean, there's just so much junk. And so covenanteyes.com is an extremely advanced tool that'll help to keep the family safe. And so check out hallow.com/lustisboring. Check out Covenant Eyes as well. We'll put links to both of those in the show notes. But let's dive right into the questions that people have sent in today. A woman's asking, how do you break up with someone that you don't want to hurt? In a way where you don't feel guilty for leaving. Plus, I feel it's a bad time and I feel I need to stay even though I don't love him anymore. Well, yeah, you do love him in the sense that you want to do what's best for him, because I can tell you don't want to hurt this guy. And so there is goodwill that's there. But if you really don't want to hurt him, what you need to do is not keep dragging this relationship on, because if you're continuing to drag on this relationship, it's disingenuous to him. And I understand, well, I don't want to hurt him. He's in a bad place in life, and I don't want to kind of kick him when he's down. But, if you really care about this guy, then you don't want to waste one more moment of his life in a relationship that you know is not ultimately going to end in marriage. Like, will this hurt? Yeah, but I mean, he's a big boy. He's going to get through this. And so how do you let go of him? One thing you could do is say, honey, is there something that I can talk to you about that's really been weighing on my heart? And hopefully he'd say, yeah, well, what is that? And then you can start giving him some compliments. I've really enjoyed this, and I like this about you, and I like that about you, but honestly, I don't think that we're really the right match for each other. And I wanted to be honest with you so that you could be free in your life to find the person who is the right match for you. And so you'll see it's not like, well, you did this and you did that, and you're just pouring on this litany of shame and blame on this guy. It's like, no, I'm going to give you some compliments. I'm going to be classy about this, but I'm also going to have integrity with it. I'm not going to do what's called ghosting. Now, ghosting is obviously this modern phenomenon where you express initial romantic interest in somebody, then you kind of lose interest and you just kind of disappear. And they're left there to put the pieces to get like, why did that person leave? What is going on? Did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Like, was it me? Is there another person? Like, what is going on? But just as you should enter into a relationship with intentionality and clarity and transparency, you should always also have those characteristics exiting a relationship, that you're not just leaving them hanging, you're explaining what went wrong, in a respectful way, and then making the departure. And so you don't want to stay out of pity. That's not a reason to stay in a relationship. And just because a relationship is hard to leave, that's not an indication that you should stay. It's just a sign that doing the right thing sometimes is difficult. And oftentimes we want to avoid difficult conversations. We just don't want to have hard conversations, but that's just part of adulting. It's just part of growing up. Is like, sometimes I have to say things that aren't going to be easy to hear. But the last thing you want to do is clog up your love life with a relationship that's frankly heading nowhere, because then if the right person does come into your life, well, then you don't want to have your love life clogged up with a relationship that you don't really ultimately have hope in. And so have respect for him and for yourself to let go. And in the meantime, find a breakup buddy. Somebody who is close to you, family member, good friend, that you can confide in. Now, this is not a rebound relationship type of person. This is if you're a girl, a sister, girlfriend, whatever, that you can pour your heart out to them. When you're tempted to reply to his text message at 1 o'clock in the morning, you text them instead. Because, if you pull away, that might be the moment he kind of draws closer to you. And when you complain, well, you've been doing this too much lately, And then you pull away, then he starts doing the right thing. And they start kind of hoovering you back. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Is he just putting on a show because he's afraid to lose me? Or has he really had a deep, true, lasting transformation? And odds are your reasons for wanting to let go of this relationship are legitimate. You need to trust your gut, find a good breakup buddy, and cut your losses. Will it be painful? Yes. But what's more painful is grasping to a relationship that perhaps God never intended to begin with. Crystal, any other thoughts on letting go?
Imagine all the time you're wasting right now. That God has a plan for you in your life, and it's getting postponed because you're trying to pat this guy along and not hurt his feelings when, just like Jason said, he's a big boy. And you know what? You just have to just kind of step up and own it. And it may be hard, but at the end of the day, God's going to take care of you and God is going to take care of him. So always just look for God's will in every situation. And deep down, I think you already know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and lastly, in the end, everyone, I think, deserves to be in a relationship with someone who wants to be with them. And he deserves that as well. And hopefully, if he can get his act together and resolve whatever issues, faults he has, that he can find a person who truly wants to be with him more than anyone. And so, out of love, I'd say it's time to let go. Next question came in. Is it okay to try to date a Protestant if you can't find a Catholic locally? Is it really realistic to convert someone of a different faith? Well, a couple things. If you can't find a good Catholic locally, we've recommended on the show before trying solid Catholic online dating websites like CatholicChemistry.com, AveMariaSingles.com, Catholic Match, Catholic Singles. Like, there's good stuff out there. Now, not everybody on these sites are going to be uber devout Catholics. Some people are like, yeah, I'm Catholic. When did you go to church last? I was baptized. I was 4 weeks old. So you're going to find a variety of folks on here, but you can also find some great people. And I know of some happy, lasting marriages that had their start on these online dating sites. And, I always say there's no such thing really as online dating, but there is such a thing as online meeting that can lead to dating, which does take place face-to-face. And so can't find someone locally, that's an option. Now, what about dating a Protestant? That's ultimately your question. Well, the question is, what do you really ultimately want to end up with? The church does allow for Catholics to marry non-Catholics. And obviously, if you want that, it's something the church can allow. And honestly, I know couples that are of different faiths that have happy, loving, respectful marriages. And I know of relationships where both are Catholic, but it's not happy or loving or respectful. And so it's not that just because someone's a different faith, you're doomed to have a miserable marriage. That's not necessarily the case. There's more factors at play there. That being said, you have to also ask yourself, well, do I want to be able to pray the rosary with my husband? Do I want to receive communion with him? Do I want him to teach my children the importance of a sacramental life? How important is that to you? Because if you have two people of different faiths that get married, they will suffer unless neither one of them really cares at all about the religion. To the extent that they do care about the religion, it will cause some tension, right? Because it's like, well, wait a minute, the kids will ask, Dad, why are you going to Mass on Sunday? And then Mom goes to her Christian praise and worship service. And, I like the music better at Mom's church, so your Masses are boring and the homilies are long, and I don't want to go to your church. So it can create some tension here. And, the bride might be, well, I want to get married in my evangelical church. Well, I want to get married in the Catholic church. And she says, well, it's got to be mine or the road. If that's the case, the church permits you to have what's called a dispensation of canonical form, meaning you could get married validly in a non-Catholic church. If this is going to happen, you do need to get permission from the bishop. He can grant permission in these circumstances, but you must promise to do everything in your power to raise the children Catholic. Your spouse does not need to make that promise, but you do. And so am I willing to is your spouse willing for you to make that promise that I want to raise these kids Catholic, even if the ceremony itself might be taking place in a non-Catholic church? Your priest could be present at that liturgy. The church does not allow for you to have like a Catholic wedding mass and then a Protestant, wedding service. There needs to be one rite. And ultimately, it's not the priest who marries you. As a baptized Christian, you can confer two sacraments upon other people by virtue of your baptism. You can baptize another person, in case of emergency or whatever, and you can also get married. If there were two Christians on a desert island and, no hope of being rescued and no priest within 1,000 miles, they could validly confer the sacrament of matrimony upon each other through their consent. And so you can get validly married outside of a Catholic church. But like I said, need to receive that dispensation from the canonical form. But you got to really ask yourself at the end of the day, okay, what do I really want? How important is it for me to be able to pray with my spouse, to share that? And if, we get along great, with him being her faith and your faith, there's a potential for a happy marriage there. I know people, Catholics who are married to not even Christians that have loving marriages. One woman that I work for, I think it was her mom was Christian, her dad was Jewish, something like that. And she said they really have a beautiful, loving, intimate relationship. And so sometimes these things are possible, but dating to convert, no, not my recommendation. The reason is if you're placing your hope in the idea that your spouse is going to change their mind when it comes to religion, maybe they will, but maybe they won't. And so you've got to ask yourself, am I comfortable if they never change their mind? Am I comfortable if I share these Scott Hahn tapes and these CDs and they listen to some theology of the body that they initially get excited but don't want to make the leap across the Tiber into the Catholic Church? If you're okay marrying someone hoping they're not going to change, then you can make a mature decision there. If you're marrying someone, on the other hand, banking that they're going to change their mind on this super important thing and they never do, I don't think it's really fair to them, nor do I think it's ultimately fair to you. So it's something ultimately to take to prayer, but those are some of the considerations you might need to weigh. Crystal, any other thoughts?
Also, you don't want to have to put your relationship with Jesus and how you serve him kind of on the back burner or kind of lower the standards of that because your significant other doesn't necessarily agree with that. Jesus needs to come first and foremost in all things, and then your spouse. And so it's really important that whoever it is you're dating is not hindering that relationship. And also, let's be realistic. Your marriage at times is going to get hard. It could get really hard. You don't know what the future holds, that you want that person on the same page, that when there are hard times, you are going to pray together, that you are going to say the rosary together, that you both are going to seek God out in the trials, in the tribulations together and ask for his help, because it does get hard. It does get difficult. And you want to make sure that you have that person on the same page, not fighting you or questioning you about your faith and why do we do this and why do we have to do this? You don't want that. Who wants that? It's like another child almost. But in the end, just seek God's will always, and he'll take care of you.
Next question comes in. Could God ever send us a partner who's not as spiritually mature as us? This happens routinely. Now, I think it happens in every marriage, actually. And the reason I say that is because no two people are really spiritually equal, right? Even if you're compatible spiritual in your religious beliefs, some person might be more spiritual at 8 o'clock in the morning and the other person's more spiritual at 8 o'clock at night. Like our virtues and our vices tend to go up and down, but there's even some examples in Christianity and of the saints where, one spouse is way far advanced. You'd look at Saint Monica. Her husband was not into the faith at all, and yet we have the gift of St. Augustine from that. It was a rough road, for Augustine, or for not only Augustine, but his mother, St. Monica, that, she had lots of prayers, lots of tears for the conversion of her husband, for the conversion of her son. And so sometimes this does take place, and sometimes God does allow us to enter into these unions. But, as we had discussed in that other question regarding mixed marriages, and it can be difficult. It can be rough. But you've got to really ask yourself, okay, how much of a gap is there between our religions? Am I excited about going to daily mass and adoration and praying the rosary? And it's like dragging him kicking and screaming just to show up at Sunday mass with me. If it's that much of, as the scriptures tell us, being unevenly yoked, it's not something I think that the scriptures really recommend, that we need to try to enter into this realizing, okay, marriage is going to be a partnership of trying to create saints. That's the goal that we both are going to want to have in entering into marriage. It's not only for the procreation of offspring, it's for the sanctification of the spouses and the offspring. It's to populate heaven with your entire family. And so you want a teammate on this. You want one who's not going to be undercutting you, especially if you're the woman, because they say the sociological studies show that children will typically follow the religious path of the father. Even if the mother is exceptionally devout, most of the kids will go the way of the faith of the father or the lack of faith of the father. I was listening to a psychologist, Dr. Paul Vitz, speaking recently. He wrote a book on faith of the fatherless. And this was an examination, a biography, in a sense, of the life of the most profound atheists. Whether it's Carl Jung, and then he was looking at Christopher Hitchens, Dawkins, a lot of these very popular modern intellectual atheists. And he says they got one thing in common. They had either a very broken relationship with their father or with a father figure in their life. And you start learning of the lives of some of these very profound public atheists where, their dad, like murdered their mom, or their stepdad murdered their mom and cheated on her. And, one of them was sexually abused by an Episcopalian reverend. And you start looking at the father wounds that some of these guys experienced. And then they bloomed into these extremely popular modern day atheist authors and, evangelists, so to speak, or de-evangelists. It's a big question. Like when you're choosing a boyfriend, you're choosing a potential father. You're choosing not only for yourself, but for the generations of descendants that might follow from this relationships. And so to me, that's a grave responsibility. And so you got to take that seriously. Am I acting not only in the best interest of me, that I like this guy and he's cute, and I just want to convert him and turn him into this little missionary project? Or is this really the best possible choice for the sanctification of myself, my family, and the families to come from us? So, Crystalina, any other thoughts there on being with a partner who's not as spiritually mature as we might be?
I think you need to make your list of your non-negotiables of what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. And again, your relationship with Jesus is the most important. And so when you're kind of coming up with that and just kind of step back, where do you want that person to be at? Do you want that person to be a spiritual leader that that you can fall on that person in those hard times and they're going to do the right thing? And you can't always assume someone is going to do that, but that is the hope. But really have those standards, set them high. And that's okay when it comes to spirituality, personality, just where they're at emotionally. It's okay to have kind of a list of what it is you want in a person. And if they don't have those qualities, it's going to be a problem down the road. And also look at yourself when you're setting these qualities or these non-negotiables. Is this something that you're living out yourself? Is this something that you're doing? Because you never want to ask someone to do something that you can't have the gumption to do yourself or that you haven't done yourself. So just make sure you know what it is you want, but also know what you don't want and be willing to walk away if those certain qualities start popping up. Because the whole purpose, if we go back just down to basics here, the whole purpose of dating is to see if you want to marry that person. The purpose is eventually marriage. So if you're going into it with the mindset like that, I think you take it more seriously. And at the end of the day, you should take the matters of your heart seriously, no matter what. Just know what it is you want, know what it is you don't want, have your non-negotiables, and that's that. And you really, truly will save yourself a lot of heartache down the road. And again, we are here with my husband, Jason Evert, and we are just going through different questions that got sent in from listeners. So what is the next question, Jason?
How would you discern a mature love from a superficial one? Can you say some relevant characteristics? Well, I pulled up, as Crystal's answering that last question, her dump him list from her booklet, Pure Womanhood. This is a pretty good starter in terms of mature love from a superficial love. And since it's your dump him list, do you want to rattle off this litany of reasons to let go?
You have to tell them more than once to stop. You feel the need to fix them. They look at pornography. They hit, push you, or do anything to frighten you. They get drunk, then take drugs. They don't care if you lie to your family. They lead you away from God. They put you down and act like they're kidding. They cheat on you. They're controlling. They lie. They flirt with other girls. They use guilt to get you to do what they want. They always resent the time that you spend with your friends and your family. They keep you from fulfilling your goals and dreams. They behave badly and then blame it on other people or things that happen to them. They can't stand on their own 2 feet without you, and you can't stand on your own 2 feet and remain pure with them and fulfill God's will in your life. These are not minor faults. They are signs of major issues that can be disastrous to a future marriage.
Yeah, and she
Boom.
adds, if any one of these apply to him and the relationship now. So it's not a matter of like, oh, well, he only has 12 of the 16. There's some hope here. Nuh-uh. I mean, a mature love from a superficial one. I remember when I was in the Philippines, a mom asked me, she said, how can I tell my daughter when it's real love in one sentence? I'm like, okay, one sentence. I said, okay, here. The closer she gets to him, the more she becomes herself. It's real love. The opposite is also true. When it's not real love, the closer you get to that person, like, you don't even know who you are anymore. Like, this isn't who I am. I didn't used to go to bed so upset. I didn't have so much anxiety and nightmares, and like, I didn't be so far from God and so distracted and hurt. Like, is this really making you who God's inviting you to be, or drawing you away from that? Also, look in terms of mature love versus superficial. If you're the guy and you like the girl, let's say, God forbid, your eyeballs get poked out. Okay. So you're now blind. To what extent are you still attracted to her? I mean, really, like, what if every woman on earth looked exactly like this woman looks? What is it about this one that would have drawn you toward her? Does she have virtue? Does she actually bring out the best in you? Do you admire her? Like, is there more to it? Because it doesn't matter if she's got all the looks in the world. Like, if she's not a woman of virtue, you're not going to have a happy marriage. It's just as simple as that. And it doesn't mean that like looks aren't important. Like, no, there should be physical attraction. Because some people ask, well, should I get married to this person even though I have no attraction to them whatsoever? I was like, I'd say no, because they deserve to be desired by you. And, it's not simply some contractual thing like, I'm not interested in you at all, but you would be good at, producing offspring for me. It's like, it's kind of sketchy. So you want to make sure that there's attraction there, but it's not just skin deep. It's not, because looks are going to go. Everything's going to go south. All the wrinkles, we're all going to get them. And then what do you have left? If all you had was the looks, well, good luck, because they're passing. In sense, those looks are used to entice us toward the sacrament. But if you don't have more than that, you don't have the friendship, you don't have love, you don't have authentic intimacy. It's just not going to be a happy life. And so, are we able to disagree respectfully? Are we able to work through problems together? Are we allowed to be at our worst sometimes? And the other person can encourage us through that, or is it just kind of throw in the towel and throw the other one under the bus as soon as the time get rough? Like, is there authentic loyalty in this relationship or not? And so those are marks of authentic relationships. So on your wedding day, you're going to be asked, do you come here today freely? And so, okay, like, am I coming into this union freely, or am I driven by lust? Am I driven by loneliness? Am I entering into it freely? Are you ready to respect and honor and love and be faithful? Because, I got an email just, I think, yesterday from someone who's in a young relationship, and there's infidelity, there's all this inappropriate texting and flirting with these ex-boyfriends, girlfriend stuff. And it's just like, no, this is not marriage prep. You're just training yourself for divorce if you want to date a person who can't even bother to be faithful to you with their text messages. Like, don't waste your time trying to rehab these relationships. Look out and hold out for a person who's authentically worthy of you. So, good question. Next one. My daughter wants my blessing to live with her drug-pushing boyfriend. He is 29 and she is 19. So, Crystalina, should that mom give her blessing to the drug-pushing, methamphetamine lab-owning boyfriend who's a decade older? Tough question.
Yeah, no, right away. That would be obviously, but it really sounds like her daughter's hurting. Her daughter really needs attention and love, and I'm not sure if her father is in her life right now or not. But obviously, you tell your daughter that this relationship isn't going to be good for you, is not good for you, and will not be fruitful in any way, shape, or form. But more than that, to just maybe love your daughter, to sit down and maybe to take her to lunch and really talk with her, look in her eyes, just see what's really going on with her, what's happened in her past, what is it that this man is providing for her to make her feel wanted or needed or loved, because in all actuality, she's really just getting used by this person. And that can't feel good. And deep down, your daughter has got to know it. When a person is being used, they know it. No matter what, they know it. And back when I was living that crazy lifestyle, I knew when I was being used. But at the same time, it's like, well, how was I using that other person? It's kind of give and take. So more than giving rules and restrictions of what she should and should not be doing, really just to love her, because there's something deep within her going on that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and part of love is sometimes love is tough. I will not give my blessing to this relationship because I love you so much. Yeah. And I am not your enemy in this. I'm your ally. All I want is for you to be cherished, but you got to pick a man who's going to be a good father. This man is not going to be a good father. Odds are he never even had a good father, so he doesn't know how to father. And so he's running to drugs to make money because he doesn't want to do the hard work that a man should ultimately do. And so this isn't the guy for you. But she may have become not only maybe physically involved with this guy, but so deeply emotionally involved that maybe she remembers who she thought he used to be, and she wants to change him back into that. Or she's got this dream of rescuing this troubled guy from his past, and eventually he's going to become this man that she'd always hoped he was going to be. And she's just dating her own imagination, and so you've got to be able to help her to realize that, she shouldn't date a guy hoping he's going to change. She deserves so much better than this. And so to be firm on this one, like, no, I will not walk you down the aisle to this guy. I just simply won't. And I know of one case where the father told the daughter that, you're a big girl, you can make your own choices, but I will not walk you down the aisle to that man and hand your hand to his on the altar. I will not. And the woman, the weight of the years of the love of the father, of knowing how he has loved me my entire life until I'm 20 years old, is so real that I know I need to let go and call off this marriage. And she did. And so it was the weight of the father's decades of love that made her know, this is the man who truly loves me, not this guy. And called off the whole wedding because of the intervention of that tough love. I remember one girl told me, but Jason, all guys are jerks. I'm like, no, there's lots of good guys. I'm like, you dating anyone? She's like, well, kinda. Tell me about him. We talked for an hour and a half. She finally admitted he's a drug dealer, swears a lot, drinks a lot, he's cheated on her, and her parents hate him. I couldn't figure out why. Parents are so unfair. And you talk to this girl, and it's like, why are you into this? She's getting hung up on a guy that she doesn't even want to be with to begin with. But she's got married to this idea of who she hopes he's going to become. So just try to love on her, like Crystalina says, so she can understand you're her ally and not her enemy.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break with our friends at EWTN, and we will be right back. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back to Women Made New. I'm your host, Crystalina Evert, and we are here with my husband, Jason Evert, answering all your questions out there. And a question came in: what is a good age to date, Jason?
Well, let's see. I've got a 13-year-old daughter, and I think it would really be good for her to start dating when she's 35. 35 is a good number. I like that number. No. I mean, no, she doesn't have to wait that long. I mean, she can go to whatever convent she wants. But okay, like what's the age number? Well, we got to step back, because I remember talking to a dad recently, and he's like, well, my daughter's 17, and back in the good old days, that was old enough to get married and go off, start your own family. And I'm like, okay. I said, look, yeah, your 17-year-old girls, some of them might be mature enough, but here's the problem. 17-year-old guys are not mature enough nowadays. People mature so much later. I remember hearing a talk from Father Rippinger, and he was talking about back in the day, he knew this dad. And the dad, they lived out in the country, owned, just hundreds of acres of wildlife. And the dad, as a rite of passage to his sons, would bring his boys out when he thought that they were old enough, mature enough, and he thought that about 10, 11 years old was the spot. He'd bring them out miles away from the house, dump them off in the wilderness with like a match, and a hatchet and a knife, and said, okay, clear 2 acres of brush and I'll pick you up in a week. And left like 11-year-old boy in the wilderness for a week. And you know what? His kids, those boys were chomping at the bit for the day that they would get that invitation from the father. As, okay, this guy's not ready yet. Okay, now you're ready. And I mean, these boys would come back almost like a rite of initiation into manhood. Like, I survived a week in the wilderness with nothing but fire and blade and torch, and, came back feeling like, hey, I've entered into masculinity. And it's like, nowadays, it's like a kid at that age wouldn't even be able to survive a day in Walmart by himself for, an hour, let alone, a week in the wilderness. But like, men have changed, unfortunately. The culture of men is very soft, largely because of porn, of how that effeminizes guys. And, men want to conquer, and they want to battle, and they want to be victorious, and they're vicariously satiating those God-given good instincts through video games. Like I battled, I won, I was victorious, I entered into war, but it's like you didn't do anything but this. Like that's all you actually did was this. No battles have been won, no kingdoms have been conquered. This is all that's happened. But it's tapping into something that's really a good God-given desire. So I think what needs to happen is like we need to get these boys outside. We need to get them camping. We need to get them in the woods. We need to give them responsibilities. And obviously easier said than done because, yeah, they do deserve relaxation. I'm not saying video games are all objectively evil all the time, but, things need to happen in moderation, moderate use of the media. Otherwise, it renders a man quite soft. Now, this is a bit of a tangent that I've gone on with the boys. It's not like all these girls are super duper emotionally mature and ready for relationships. Many are not. Many of these girls are dating for the sake of status, for social purposes of like, now I've got a boy. Because she had a boyfriend, and she had someone texting her until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I want someone who wants me. And sometimes it's not even that they want the guy. They just want to be wanted by a guy. And if you want me, well, that's good enough for me. But that's why I think dating in high school is pointless. I do not agree with dating in high school. And that's partly because it's not objectively the age that matters, right? Because 100, 200, 2,000 years ago, that's when people got married, right? People didn't wait till they're 28 years old. This is the first time in American history where the majority of Americans are not married. This has never happened before. The first time ever that most Americans are not in a marriage is right now. And so people are getting married later and later. Average age of marriage is somewhere around 28 years old. That's about a decade later than it used to be. And so obviously that creates lots of challenges with chastity because I have these urges for marital union, but most people aren't getting married for a decade from now. And so the right time to date would be when marriage is reasonably within reach. And so I would say you should be at least in college and take the first semester off. You get to college, so many new possibilities, opportunities, friendships, interests, activities. Don't just jump into the romance real fast. Take advantage to savor all that university life has to offer in a healthy way. Get your feet on the ground because, you're homesick. It's exciting. There's so many new friends, social circles. Don't jump right into the romance. Give it a little bit of time. After you're set, then start thinking, okay, who would make a worthy spouse? Who would make a good mother? Who would make a good father? Not just boyfriend, girlfriend. Think mother, father, husband, wife. Those are the potential candidates. Not the cutest person you could possibly find on campus who actually likes you back. Look for more than that. And then you're optimizing your chances for having lasting love. So I just don't recommend dating in high school. Part of it also neurologically, the part of your brain that's in charge of critical thinking isn't really fully mature until you're like 24, 25 years old. That's why rental car companies won't even let you rent a car until you're in your mid-20s because they know who's making stupid decisions behind the wheel. So you can't rent a car for prom because they won't let you have it. And so your brains are half-baked right now. That part of the brain that's not fully developed, they said the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. It's right over here. And for a teenager, it's like half-baked. So if your parents ever said to you, like, what were you thinking? That's actually the part you don't have right now. So you can kind of get back at them for that. So totally underdeveloped. But that's why they say the marriages where both couples' ages add up to at least 50 are more likely to have lasting marriages. Like he's 26, she's 24. And I think that's in part because those parts of the brain are fully established. Also, if people get married too early, not all the time, but some of the time, especially the girl gets kind of like itchy a couple of years into marriage where she's like, wait a minute, I never got my degree. I never traveled Europe with my friends. I never got into my career. I never reached my potential. It was always about the boy, the boy, the boy. And that sometimes can create a bit of vocational resentment. And so each couple is different. And so I know couples that did get married, that are our age, and they got married when they were 18, 19 years old and have beautiful, happy, lasting marriages. But the divorce rates are higher for couples who marry at that time because I think people are simply maturing later in life. And so ultimately, engagement is not for people who can't wait to get married. Engagement is for people who are ready to get married. And we shouldn't be dating, in my opinion, until marriage is reasonably within reach. This is not to say that, if you're dating in high school, you're sinning. Church has never said that. Every couple's unique, but I think if you're really going to have lasting love, take your time and build the foundation of friendship because long-term, you're not just delaying romance, you're actively building the foundation of lasting love by focusing on the friendship rather simply on the romantic interest. So, Crystalina, any thoughts on good age to date?
As hard as it is for parents to tell their children no, or just, oh, you're so overprotective, or you're just being so mean, it's just not right, everyone else is dating. And yes, I've heard those things in my household. You have to put your foot down. It is your job to protect your children. And I know what it was like for me in high school, and I got completely consumed by the dating relationship I was in as a young woman, being quote unquote in love, I thought. And my studies just fell to the wayside. My friendships fell to the wayside. And like Jason said, it was all about the guy. And you don't want to be the one without the boyfriend or the girlfriend, but they should be, because if they can get through high school not dating someone, imagine the foundation that you are putting in your children with self-control, obedience, respect, and also waiting for something. Like they can wait, and that's okay, because the time will come, right? That patience that they really don't have right now, especially in our now culture, right? And also, I would say they're learning how to have friendships. They are learning how to just have an opposite sex friend, which is very difficult, but it all goes back to that self-control. So if you can get those foundational things in your children through high school, then they get to college. Oh my goodness, what a blessing for them that those virtues developed in them when they're going out by themselves. And a lot is going to come at them that you've prepared them for. So as hard as it may be, stick to your guns. It doesn't matter how bad, or if they whine, or if they complain, or they want to tantrum out. That's okay. They can go do that and they're going to be fine. But I would really stick to it. And I don't care what everybody's doing out there. That's not what we're doing in our home. And that's just how life is going to be, period. And you can be nice and kind and everything about it, and let them do what they're going to do and have their emotions and work through that themselves. And then also send them to adoration. Have them go talk to Jesus. Teach them to have that foundation, because one day when you're not around, Jesus will be for them. And if you could teach them to talk to Jesus about what's going on and their problems and what's going on inside of them, and maybe there's times where they don't want to talk to you about things that you may not understand, well, Jesus will understand. And that if they go off to college somewhere, or they go to the military, or they're going and they have a vocation, Jesus will be there. So to really form that relationship more than others right now. And I wanted to ask you, Jason, how long should an engagement be? I know of engagements that last forever, which is a joke. Okay, it's not right. At least that's my opinion. Kind of harsh, but it's true. There should be a time limit. But what is that time limit?
No, I'm in agreement with you that engagements should not be indefinitely long, especially. Like sometimes I get friends that get engaged. I'm like, oh, congratulations, that's so awesome. When's the big date? I'm like, well, we don't know. I'm like, what you guys thinking? And they're thinking, well, maybe sometime during the next presidency, we're thinking. It's like, okay, no. I often say that like engagement is not supposed to feel like the 40 years that Moses spent wandering in the wilderness. Like when are we going to get to the promised land? This is a really unique season of your lifelong relationship that should be clear and focused of like, okay, last stage of marriage preparation begins. Not the first stage of marriage preparation. Engagement's the final stage of marriage prep. And you've got to be buckling down, and it's exciting. Hey, we're going to send out invitations. We're going to pick out the stationery for the invites, and we're going to pick the readings for our mass. Like the time should be full of that. And so I think it shouldn't be anywhere more ideally than a year. 6 to 12 months, like that's plenty of time, because also you have the increased temptations in the sense that, okay, like I know we're going to get married. And a lot of times you tend to start justifying lust of just like, hey, we're going to be husband and wife, 2 months from now. It's not a big deal if we just go a little bit further. But in reality, a couple who's getting married tomorrow afternoon is just as married to their spouse as I am right now to that person. You either have a complete spousal union through the sacrament of marriage, or you're not married at all. And so we need to reserve for marriage the expressions of intimacy that are proper to marriage. And as you draw closer to the sacrament, you should have an ever increasing desire to guard the innocence of the other person, instead of thinking that we're somehow entitled to go a little further and further and further. And like, yeah, we won't go all the way, but we'll go really close. This is not going to bring you closer together. You want to make sure you're preparing in purity so that on your wedding day, the bride can come forth towards the groom and her soul matches her dress, right? That her body, the purity of what they've practiced, she's glowing. Who is it? Archbishop Fulton Sheen said the beauty on the outside never gets into the soul, but the beauty of the soul reflects itself upon the face. And so a man, through his sacrifice of chastity during engagement, is, as Christ was said in the book of Ephesians, he presents his bride to himself without spot or blemish or any such thing, that she might be holy without blemish. And so it's a Christ-like act to prepare one another for the sacrament in purity. And when it's a super long engagement, that's just more difficult to do. And so I would say 6 months, 12 months tops, keep it simple. And like I had said before, engagement is not for people who can't wait to get married. Engagement is for people who are ready to get married. Next question came in. How come a guy will act interested in a girl, but after they sleep together, he acts like he doesn't know her? This, unfortunately, is quite common. Why does this happen? Well, a number of reasons. One, from simply a neurological perspective, sexual bonding through a man and a woman releases a neurochemical in the man's brain called vasopressin. They often speak about how women experience oxytocin. Well, men do as well, but not as high as levels. They call that like human superglue, this great bonding. Vasopressin works a little bit differently. It really heightens the man's sense of responsibility. And this takes place after intercourse. He suddenly feels this heightened sense of responsibility, like, am I ready for what I just asked for? Am I ready for what this means? This could mean kids. This could mean an enduring relationship. I need to care about her feelings. I need to do, like, oh, I'm in over my head. I'm out the door. And so sometimes it's precisely that hormone that locks a man in and down on his family of like responsibility. Yes, I'm ready for this. That's what bonds, in a sense, a man to his spouse and to his kids, more responsibility. But for a man who doesn't want to ultimately have those responsibilities, having that surge heightens his awareness that he's not ready for what he just asked for. He's almost like a dog that's chasing the mailman's truck, and he actually finally bit the bumper. And he's like, okay, now that I've got this truck, what do I do with it? Like, I wasn't expecting I'd actually get this. Now that I have the truck, I don't know what to do with it. And it's almost like they're in the pursuit of just getting it. But then once they've got it, like, what else is there? Well, I got what I wanted. Well, what else does she really have to offer? Emotions, needs, relationship, ups and downs. Like, I don't want all that stuff. And so the problem was, it wasn't her that he desired. It was the pleasure that he could get from her. It wasn't her that he wanted. Because if it really was her that he'd wanted, then he can have her after he's been that close to her, but he got what he wanted. That was what the goal was. Her goal may have been intimacy. Her goal may have been to show him how much she cares about him and that this is going to win him in the relationship. And so her goal was beyond the bedroom. His goal was the bedroom. And so once he's got that, I mean, there's that rather crass expression of why buy a cow when you can get the milk for free. And so in a sense, he got what he wanted. And unfortunately, it wasn't that you weren't enticing enough or beautiful enough or available enough. Like, a lot of times that's what the girls will think. Well, maybe I just wasn't good enough for him in the bedroom, and I'm not skinny enough, and I'm not sexy enough and appealing. And they start looking at themselves like, honey, like, you're not the problem. Your body's not the problem. The problem is he never wanted you to begin with. He wanted the pleasure he could get at your expense. And so that's a painful realization. But I remember reading, when Crystal and I were writing the book, How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul, I came across this book on dating and relationships, and it was not from a good perspective, but I found this quote from it where it was this pair of Casanovas giving dating advice to guys on how to get women to sleep with them. It was some like internet thing that popped up while I was doing the research on one of the chapters, and I read this thing, and it basically says, look, when you meet a girl, try to get in bed with her as fast as possible. And the reason for that is because before you sleep with her, she's really asking herself, why is this guy worth me sleeping with to begin with? They're more critical. Like, why should I let you be that close to me? But he said, look, after you sleep with her, then she's looking for reasons for why you're worth being with in the first place. And so instead of looking at your negatives, they're starting to look at your positives. Well, at least he has that. And they're starting to justify why they were with you in the first place. And so some of these guys, I'm sorry, their hearts are not in the right place. And that's why chastity is the guardian of love. It opens a path toward love. Because if he's unwilling to be chaste with you, then I'm sorry, it's not you that he desires. I often say it's like a cigarette smoker. Like, dude, cigarettes, addicts, they don't really want cigarettes, right? I mean, you can tell that by looking in any ashtray. They don't want cigarettes. They want the feeling they get from the nicotine in the cigarette. And once that thing is smoked down to a little butt, they just flick it to the curb. Well, why? Didn't they want a cigarette? No. They just wanted the feeling they got from it. They ultimately had no use for that little rolled up piece of paper and tobacco. And so, unfortunately, a lot of girls feel like that after a broken sexual relationship. I feel like he smoked what he wanted, and now I'm just flicked to the curb. And you might feel like you're damaged and you're discarded and you're worthless and worthless, but you're not. Your dignity is not contingent upon that man's lack of ability to love you rightly. Don't give him that much power over you. You still deserve love. You're still worthy of love. You just got to pick yourself up and realize, you know what? Sometimes you learn wisdom the hard way. And I didn't think it would end up like that. It was certainly not my intention, but I know that's not going to happen again. I remember Crystal quoting some quote from a book she read that, look, where it says, like, ladies, your past might be messy, but your future's spotless. And so realize that. Yep, past might not be so pretty, but you know what? My whole life, if it's a book, all the pages yet to be written are completely blank, and I can put whatever I want on those. So don't define your future by your past, but cut your losses, realize the wisdom you gain, and move on to find the love that you deserve. Any other thoughts on that one? Why a guy sleeps with a girl and then pretends like he hardly even knows her?
I think you pretty much covered it at that point, but I will say when it comes to relationships, and we really do want to find that significant other. I understand that. And I've seen a lot of women always looking. Is this the one? Is this the one? And I talked about this before, but stop looking outside for that person, but really start searching within of what God is calling you to in your lives. And so often we get distracted with what's going on outside of us and trying to fulfill our own wants and our needs and grasping. When just stop and pray and really just go in, because 9 times out of 10, God is asking you to do something that you've been ignoring for a very long time. And if you just go and move towards the will of God and answer whatever it is he's asking you to do, you never know where your life can end up. I mean, I got on a plane and I went to the Bahamas to learn how to become a better chastity speaker because I wanted to help young women. And boom, there was my future husband, and it's when I was trying to fulfill the will of God is when he gave me Jason, when I was ready for Jason. Now, that isn't always going to be the case for everyone else, but as long as you're doing the will of God, I know he's going to bless you. I know he's going to give you everything your heart desires down the road. It may not be right now, but it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, God will give you the grace to endure all things if you just go to him.
Last question. We only got a couple minutes left here, but if you're going too far with a guy, how do you stop suddenly and say no? One thing, make sure you're saying no with your body as well as with your words. Because if you're lying there on a couch with a guy in an embrace, whispering into his ear, no, like, okay, yeah, he should respect that, obviously, immediately. But it's a lot more effective if you communicate it with your body as well, meaning I'm getting up, I'm standing up, I'm stepping away, and I'm saying, I don't feel comfortable doing this with you. And if you respect me, I need you to respect that. Could it be a little awkward? Yeah, it could. But if he loves you, he'll respect you. And then also try to realize, am I putting myself in an occasion of sin? Am I allowing myself to get so far with my boyfriend because I think it's going to end there, when every time we end up doing that, it ends up going a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And so as they say, if you're not going to Cleveland, what are you doing on the train? And so get off the train. Don't put yourself in situations where it's going to be really difficult to kind of rev up all these desires and then slam on the brakes. But make sure to speak a very clear no with your words and with your body. And if he doesn't respect that no, then he doesn't respect you, and you should get out of that relationship.
And you have to ask yourself, why did it even get to that point? Why did it get there? And look, you can look at yourself and then also him. And Is he always pushing you to the edge? Are you always having to have these conversations? And if you are, it just needs to stop. You should have that conversation one time. I remember Jason and I, we talked about those things maybe one time, just where we were both at a dinner, we were on a date, and we never had to talk about it again. And we both were on the same page. We just wanted to serve God. We wanted to be pure. And it was so easy. And those relationships where you're constantly having to be the no police with your significant other is exhausting. And that's not the kind of relationship you want to have. And babysitting someone to make sure you guys don't go too far is not really an ideal godly relationship. And if that is what you are searching for, is having that ideal godly relationship that's going to bring both of you closer together, not further apart, then you shouldn't have these conversations over and over and over. It is quite tedious.
Yeah, and it's going to be a challenge. And it doesn't mean that, like, if you're struggling in this area, God, this is not his plan for you. There's going to be struggles. It's going to be difficult. It's easy to the extent that you desire to be pure and really avoid those occasions of sin. But sometimes we fail to do those things. But God loves you. He's patient with you. But make sure you're both on the same team, fighting for purity, instead of one of you being the chastity cop and the other one trying to see what they can get at your expense. Chastity is hard enough when you both agree with it. It's still going to be a battle. But you just want to make sure that person has your back instead of having a person who's simply going to take everything that you're willing to give. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that Q&A session. If you do have questions, please send them to us through Patreon. Patreon is our online community of supporters who basically keep this entire podcast afloat by their financial support. And it doesn't have to be $100 a month. I mean, literally $5 a month. $10 a month. The cost of a burrito, essentially a month, is a huge blessing for our family because there's a lot of different costs involved with this when creating the YouTube thumbnails to the lighting and the audio, the studio, the video editing. There's a lot of behind the scenes costs. And so your support of us helps us to spread this message all over the globe. I mean, we've reached more than 100,000 people with the different episodes we've done so far, but we want to be in the millions. And so the support that you give to us helps to make that a possibility. In exchange, you get all kinds of free stuff. You're going to get exclusive content that nobody else sees. You are, like Crystal and I are going to do a question right after this that only our Patreon supporters will see the answers to. You're going to get free t-shirts, free books. If I come to your area, we'll hang out with the different Patreon supporters in person, give you my personal email. If you got questions, you can just send them to me directly. All of that is available through the Patreon support community. And so Crystalina can even speak to herself how much it's a blessing to our family and to the podcast by helping us to spread the message.
No, it's been a wonderful blessing to our family. Thank you so much for everyone that is supporting us out there and helping us reach people all over the world. And if maybe in the back of your mind, you think, oh, it really doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. It does. It really does matter. So please support us, join us, and just know we're praying for you.
Yeah, so you just go to patreon.com/Jason Evert in order to support the family and the mission through Patreon. In the meantime, please pray for us, pray for our family, and be assured of our prayers as well. In the meantime, keep your standards high as heaven. God bless.